We're going to be making the bolts and we're going to be adding them to our rim just as I've done here. You'll notice that the bolt shape in the center is a bit of a custom shape. I believe this is probably more specific to these Lamborghini bolts. Possibly there's some other cars that use similar bolts, but these are an interesting shape that you don't see all the time. So let's take a look at the bolt itself. This is the general bolt shape itself right here. You'll see a link in the description, or a few links possibly that show you better angles of what this actually looks like in the real world. Another interesting thing to be aware of with this bolt is it's actually a two-piece bolt. This, I believe, is a newer style bolt where this part right here, so if I select this part real quick and just change this on my thing here, this part actually on the real thing is loose. It can actually slide up and down, and you may see that in some of the pictures as well. They'll show that this part actually can move. So these two pieces in the real world are actually separate, and we're going to model them that way. So this will be my reference for this video. You can use the references that are linked in the description if you would like to try to make an accurate representation of this bolt. So we're going to go back to our Blender file here, and we're going to go to a new layer, so just left click on this layer. I'm going to press T to open up the tools menu and go up here and then go to create, and we're going to create a circle. Just make sure your cursor is in the center, so do Shift S, cursor to center, and we're going to create a circle. We're going to do 12 vertices and then press enter. The reason we're doing 12 in this case is because we have 6 points on this star shape, and we have 6 points that are on the inner part of the star shape. So 6 and 6 is 12, and that's the reason we're starting with a shape of 12. So we're going to press tab to go into edit mode, RY90, and press enter. We can do 3 for side view, and S to scale this down. And you can try to make it similar to the size of this bolt here, but just make sure you switch to median point when you're scaling so that you don't get distortion of your circle. So I'm just going to try to match the size roughly. We can always scale this later. So this is probably a decent size for now for the beginning of our bolt here. Next thing to do is switch to vertex select. We want to create this star shape, but actually first, before we do that, we're going to create this outer shape first. And then one thing you'll notice about this in the pictures as well as in this reference is that there's kind of this inward angle on this star-shaped part where it actually goes in like this. And we're going to use a shrink wrap modifier to create that. So we're going to start by making this shape, and we're going to make this bowl shape, which is going to be used to help us with the shrink wrap modifier. So we're going to do E to extrude, right click to cancel, and I'm actually going to bring this one out. So I'm going to do S to scale this out, and we can scale this in more later. And maybe I'm just going to do A twice and scale this in a little actually. And then we'll Alt right click on this, and then do E to extrude, right click to cancel, S to scale this down. And I'm going to do period on the number pad to focus in on this, and then just bring this back some, S to scale it down some more, bring it back some more, scale it down a bit more. And this is going to be the angle for how far back this is actually going to go. This is going to be our reference angle, so the further back you bring it, the farther back that little part's going to go right here. And the closer you bring it, the closer it's going to be. So you just kind of want to try to get it to where you think it's going to be the appropriate shape. So something like this is probably going to be fine. And I believe another thing I did on this other one was I just did Control R, left click and bring this in. Again, that's going to be a supporting edge loop, so that when we add subdivisions, this is going to look fine once we add subdivisions in. And we could do the same on the outside, but for now we're actually just going to leave it. So I'm just going to leave the outside the way it is. The next step is to create this star shape. And to do that, what we're going to do is Alt right click on this inner circular area here. I'm going to do 3 for side view. And then we're going to do Shift D to duplicate, right click to cancel. And we want to make this into a separate object, so we're going to do P to separate and choose selection. Now we're going to press Tab to go into object mode, right click, and you should see the circle here. Then press Tab to go into edit mode, so now we have these new vertices as a different object. So we're going to press A to select this, and what we want to do is we want these points to be the furthest points, and then we want these in between points to be pulled in towards the center of the circle so that we make this star shape. So we want to select essentially every other point and then scale them in so we get that star shape. So what I'm going to do is hold Shift, right click to deselect, and then right click to select. That'll make sure this is the active point. Which point is the active point is going to make a difference in this next command. So if we do select, checker deselect, you see this point is still selected and then it deselects the next point. If you had a different point as your selected point, which is the one that's in white, when you do select, checker deselect, you notice this point is selected and this one's not selected. So it will make a difference which point is in white. So you want to make sure that this one's in white and then do select, checker deselect, and then you can do S to scale this in. And this is going to create that star shape. And you can bring it in probably about this far. And at this point, if you want, you can do Tab and then right click to select this and H to hide it, so you can get a better look at the star shape on this. This isn't the best reference, but there are other references in the description, so just check out those references. But we can see that it's a beveled star shape, so we need to add bevels to these vertices here. So we're going to do Tab to go into edit mode, and we're going to do Control, Shift, and B. And we're going to mouse wheel up twice until we have 4 vertices. And we'll do probably a bevel like this, and then left click. The reason I'm doing 4, and I'm going to do 4 on this other ones as well, is because we're going to be adding subdivisions to that outer part. And the ending result is going to subdivide each vertex on the outer part 4 times. So if we subdivide the vertices on this 4 times, we'll have an equal number of vertices on this part as well as an equal number of vertices on the outer part. So this will just make it it'll make it easier to join the 2 parts together at a later point. So now we're going to select all these outer points, just select one, and then hold Shift and select the rest. Do Control, Shift, and B, mouse wheel up twice. And now we're going to create that outer curve. Maybe something like this is going to be fine. And then left click. So that's it for that part. What we're also going to do is Alt right click, F to make a face, I to inset, and do a small inset This is just going to help correct the shading later on, and it's also going to help with the shrink wrap modifier to make sure that it's able to shrink wrap to the outer part. Then we're going to press delete and choose faces. And we can also press A and do Control N, or if that's not working, go to mesh, normals, and flip normals so that it's a lighter color so you know the normals are facing towards us. Now we can press tab to go to object mode, alt H to unhide the other part. Select this other part by right clicking it and do Control 2. That's going to add in a subdivision surface modifier, so if I go up here you'll see the subdivision surface modifier. You can also left click on add modifier and just add a subdivision surface modifier. It's the same thing. And then just change the view and render subdivisions to 2 and you'll have the same result. Then we're going to go to tools. We're going to click on smooth shading to make it a smooth shading, and we can do the same on this object, so select it and choose smooth shading. Now what we want to do in order to have the shrink wrap modifier use that subdivision, we're just going to apply this modifier. So right click on this part and then click apply, and then select this part, add modifier, shrink wrap, left click on the eyedropper for the target, left click on the circle, change this to project, turn on the negative, and everything should be looking like this, where it's all snapped nice and tight up against this piece, and then you can click apply. Now what we're going to do is select this part and we're going to tab into edit mode. We actually want to get rid of all this stuff right here. It's all unnecessary stuff. The only thing we really want to keep is this nice beveled corner right here. Everything else can go away. So we can alt right click on this, press delete and choose vertices. Select a vertex here, do Control L, delete and choose vertices. Then we can press tab to go to object mode, select this piece, shift select this piece, Control J to join them together. We can press tab to go to edit mode. Now what we want to do is to join these pieces to this circle around here. But if I do 3 for side view, one thing you'll kind of notice is that these two are not lined up very well with this vertex, and I'll just show you what I mean real quick by joining these two together. This is just an example, you don't have to follow along at this point. So what's going to happen is you're going to end up with these stretched quads right here. It still kind of works, there's still quads, but it's not really the ideal situation. So what we want to do is actually rotate this around a bit so it's going to make a better quad, and you'll see what I mean when we actually do it. So we're going to select the vertex here and we're going to do Control L. But another thing to keep in mind is that actually when you alt right click on this inner circle, you can see we have 48 vertices, and in order to know how far we want to rotate this, we essentially want to rotate half a rotation so that we have a vertex here and a vertex here to create a better quad shape. So we know we want to do half a rotation, so we're going to bring out our calculator here. I'm going to clear mine because I already did this. And in order to get a full rotation, it's 360 divided by the number of vertices, and in this case we have 48. So it's 360 divided by 48 and press enter, which gives you 7.5, but we actually want to do half a rotation, and this number is for a full rotation. So we want to divide this by 2, so we're going to do divided by 2 and press enter. And then we're going to right click on this and copy it. So it's 3.75 is the number. And make sure you're in side view or right view by pressing 3 on the number pad. And then alt right click on this inner edge and then Control L, because we actually want to rotate the whole thing. So once you've done Control L and you have the whole thing, do R and then do Control V to paste that value, and you'll see down at the bottom left, just below my mouse right now, you see it's 3.75 for the rotation. Then press enter, and you can see now you have a better shape for your quads. Like when we make a quad here, it's going to be much nicer, and it's the same all the way around. Like the quads are very much set up a lot better. So what we're going to do is Alt right click, Alt and Shift right click to select these. If you have your hotkey set up, you can do Shift Q, and that's going to automatically do bridge edge loops. If you don't have your hotkey set up, go to Mesh, Edges, Bridge Edge Loops, and just left click on this. Or if you want to set up your hotkey, just right click, click on Add Shortcut. It says Change Shortcut for me because I already have it as a shortcut, but it's going to be in the same spot. So just click on Add Shortcut, hover your mouse over this, do Shift and Q, and it's now Shift and Q. So you can either just left click on it or do Shift and Q, and you'll have very nice topology. And if you press tab to go into edit mode or object mode, you'll see you have this nice star shape with very good shading here. Because of the way that we set it up, we have nice shading. This is one of the harder parts, so we have pretty much the harder part out of the way. So we're going to Alt right click on this inner part. We're going to do E to extrude, right click to cancel, and bring this back. That's going to create that inward part for the piece that would be put in here to tighten and loosen the bolt. Just bring it back as far as you feel is necessary. Probably something like that is going to be appropriate. And another thing I did was try to make some nice quads is on this inner part here, which is a little bit tricky, but I think we can manage to do it here. So first we're going to press Shift H. That's going to hide everything except for these newly created vertices. We're going to do 3 for side view. And we want to make quads out of these, so we're going to select these 4 at the end, and we're going to press F, and we're just going to do that all the way around. You can also just select one, hold Control, select this one, and then press F. So select, Control select, and then press F. Once that's done, we're going to create a couple more faces. So we're going to select these 2 and then press F twice. Select these 2, press F twice, and then repeat that all the way around. Now we're going to select these 4 and press F. Select these 4 and press F. Select these 4 and press F. And we actually could have just selected these 2 and pressed F. That would have worked as well. So either way works just fine. And then you can select these here in the center, these 4, and press F. And you now have all quads for your topology. Now in order to correct the shading, we're just going to press A twice. We're going to do I to inset and just do a small inset. This is just to help correct the shading. And we can actually, another thing we want to do is do Control plus. And one thing you'll notice is this is actually still in that angled shape that we made before. And we don't want that for the bottom of it. We actually just want it to be a flat surface. So to make it a flat surface, we're going to do S, X, and then 0 to flatten it out on the x-axis, and press enter. So S to scale, X for the x-axis, 0, and then press enter. And then do Alt-H to unhide, A to deselect, and we can now see that we have that nice star shape with a nice bottom to it. Everything's looking good. Now we're going to start creating this part going down to this part. So we're just going to go into edit mode, alt right click on the outer edge, and we can do E to extrude, right click to cancel, and just bring this back. And we're going to try to match the same distance as this. Again, you can use the real pictures if you would like to compare it to the real pictures instead. And then we're going to bring it back a little bit further. So we're going to do E to extrude, right click to cancel, bring it back a little bit further. And then I'm going to scale it out. So we're going to do S to scale it out a bit. Not too much. Then we want to bring it back some more. And then scale it back in some more. So we're going to do E to extrude, right click to cancel, bring it back some more. Maybe a little bit less than that. E to extrude, right click to cancel, scale this down some. I'm going to take a quick look at how I did this. Okay, so it gets scaled down quite a bit here, so we're just going to scale this down quite a bit. So that looks good for that, but you'll notice that we don't have the best shading here. So in order to improve that, we can add in some bevels. So we can alt right click, do Control B, mouse wheel up once, and that'll make that look a little nicer. Then we can do the same on these, alt right click, change it to edge select, alt and shift right click, Control B, mouse wheel up once, do some bevels here as well. So now we're starting to get that shape. It looks pretty much similar to this. The next thing to do would be to make this piece. It's a little easier to just do this piece first. And in order to make this, I just used an add-on to make this really simple. So we're going to go to File, User Preferences. We're going to click on Add-ons. And we're going to type in the search box Bolt. And we're going to enable, put a check mark on Bolt Factory, and then you can close this. Now you can do Shift A to add a new object, and then go to Mesh, and then go down to Bolt to add in the bolt. You also could have gone to Add, Mesh, and chosen Bolt. Would have done the same thing. So now we have a bunch of settings that we can adjust here. And one thing I noticed about the amount of rings that they have on the real thing is there's approximately 13 of them. So this has, let's see, this actually has 13 of them by default, it looks like, so that's pretty good. It worked out pretty well. Another thing is that these points here, or this surface here, is a little bit wider, and in order to change that, it's this crest percent here. So just hold shift and left click and you can change the crest percent, make it a little bit wider here, something similar to that, maybe a little bit less. And there's also more space in between them. So if we hold shift and left click, we can create more space in between them with this root percent. Something like that seems to be relatively appropriate. As usual, just look at the reference pictures and make your own decision as far as how much space there should be on both of these values. And then to simplify things, we're going to go back to the top here and change the head value from hex to cap. And then we're pretty much done with this object here. The next thing we're going to do, and this should be the last thing that you do, because once you press this, you're going to lose all of these settings. So once you're done with all these settings, just click on Smooth. That'll get rid of these settings. Tab into edit mode. We actually don't need anything on the top here. And And we also don't need most of the stuff down here either. So what we can do is just determine where we want this to stop. So maybe here is good, or a little bit further. Maybe we'll get rid of this one. So I'm going to alt right click on this, and we'll do delete and choose vertices. I think that should be fine. It looks like that'll be fine. Then select one of the edges up here, do Control L, and then do delete and choose vertices. We only need this much of it because we've already created the top of our bolt here. We didn't need the one that they gave us. We just needed the bottom and the spiral thing. So we should be all set with this. So now we can tab into object mode, shift right click to select this, do Control J to join them together, tab into edit mode, select an edge here, do Control L, then do R, Y, and 90, press enter, S to scale this down to whatever scale you believe you should have it at. And we want this to be nice and perfectly centered here. In order to do that, what we're going to do is alt right click on pretty much any of these edges here, then do Shift S, cursor to selected. That's going to put the cursor right in the center of all these edges and things. Select an edge on this, do Control L, Shift S, selection to cursor with the offset option. So we're going to click on this, and that's going to center it perfectly, but we need to move it back some. So we're going to move it back to maybe about here or so, maybe a bit further depending on, you know, your reference right here. Just bring it back to wherever you think it needs to be. Then we can alt right click on the very top edge loop to select it, because we want to start bringing this in this direction. And this part actually goes all the way to the top and connects to the top part, because remember, as I said before, this piece is actually separate and it can slide up and down. It's actually not connected to the top part or the bolt itself. So this is that second piece, and the rest of this that you see here is all one piece. So this needs to go all the way up to the top and connect to this outer loop here. So we're going to do that now. We're going to go back. With this selected, we're going to do E to extrude, right click to cancel, bring this forward. And we can actually get rid of this edge loop. But first I'm just going to alt right click and scale it out some. And then alt right click, G, and then X. Hold Control and snap it to this very outer point. You want to make sure you get one of these outer points here to make sure it has the correct X value. So do G, then X, hold Control, and snap it to this point here. And the reason I left this inner loop is I kind of wanted to compare how the rotation was. So again, we kind of have a rotational issue where this is like halfway in between. And the other thing I actually forgot to do was make sure that this had the same number of edges or vertices. See, this has 36 vertices. Fortunately, this is pretty easy to edit, so I'm just going to have to add in a new bolt. So I'm going to do Control L, delete, choose vertices. Then I'm going to do Shift A, add a new bolt. It's all the same stuff we just did before. And hopefully it actually kept the settings that I had. It looks like it did. So the only thing I have to change is the division count. So at the bottom, change this to 48. And that should be it. Just turn smooth shading on. So do tab, turn on smooth shading, tab again. And we will alt right click on this one, I believe we did, then delete vertices, select Control L, delete vertices, and we're back to where we were. Select Control L, R, Y, then 90, press enter, and do Shift S, cursor or selection to cursor, scale it down, bring it back, all the same stuff we did before. And that's probably going to be good for that. So we're just going to Alt right click on the outer edge, E to extrude, right click to cancel, G, then X, hold Control, snap it here. And now we're going to look at the positioning again. It looks like, yeah, it's about halfway. So we're going to do Control L. We're going to do 3 to go to side view, and Z for wireframe. And yeah, it looks like it's probably about halfway. So we're going to do R, then Control V to paste. The value is 3.75, so you can just enter that in if you want, and then press the Enter key. And it doesn't look like it did a whole lot, but it looks like things are more lined up if you look at these here. So now what we're going to do is Alt right click on this and then press delete and choose vertices, then Alt right click on this and Alt and Shift right click on this. Again, we're going to do bridge edge loops, so if you have the hotkey, do Shift and Q. Otherwise, go to mesh, edges, bridge edge loops, and do it that way. So now we have this piece here, which looks a bit too long, so I'm actually going to go to vertex select, Z for wireframe, B to box select. Select these and bring this back a little bit. And that should be fine. And again, to help the shading here, we're going to add a bevel. So we're going to Alt right click, Control B, mouse wheel up once, and then left click. And we're now starting to get some better shading. We're going along pretty good, so I'm just going to save this, go to File and Save. For this last piece here, it actually has the same radius as this part here. Like you see, this part gets scaled further out, but this part gets scaled back in again to be the same radius as this. So we can use this radius to create this radius for this part. So in order to do that, we're just going to tab into edit mode, and we're going to Alt right click on this edge here, this outer edge, Shift D to duplicate, right click to cancel, bring it back. It's fine if it's a little bit further back, we can always move it forward again later. Then do E to extrude, right click to cancel, bring this back. Try to create a similar distance here. So that's probably too much. I want to do about this. Then we're just going to extrude and scale this in. So we're going to do E to extrude, right click to cancel, bring this back. S to scale it in. You want to scale it in until it's just a little bit bigger than this bolt part. And then that will be fine. Then we're going to do E to extrude, right click to cancel, and then finally scale it in to be almost touching that part. So if we go back to object mode and turn on smooth shading, we still have to do the bevels to make this look better, but we have the basic shape of this at this point. Then we can do E to extrude, right click to cancel, bring it back on the x-axis, hold Control and snap it to this vertex or any of these vertices on this point. Then do Alt and Shift, right click to select these two edge loops, Shift and Q, and that will bridge edge loops as usual. We can do Control L, then Shift H, so we only have this piece. And now we just have to add in some bevels. So we can go to edge select, and then Alt right click, Alt and Shift right click, and do Control B, mouse wheel up once. Do the same thing here. You can Alt right click, Alt and Shift right click, and if you want to make this one a little bigger, you can do Alt right click, then S to scale this out a little bit more. Then you can Alt and Shift right click, Alt and Shift right click, and now we can do Control B, mouse wheel up once, left click, and now we have that nice shape right here, as well as the nice bevels. So if we do Alt H to unhide everything, select an edge here, do Control L, and if we do 1 for front view, we can slide this up by just dragging it on the x-axis and bring it up nice and close so it looks like it's right up against this. And it does look like this bolt part's probably a bit longer than this one, even though this one's pretty close to the reference as far as I can tell. On the actual rim here, it just didn't seem like it went back far enough. Maybe I'm wrong, but I don't think it goes back far enough, so I'm probably just going to leave this one a little bit longer, because I think it's probably going to have to be a little longer for our rim anyway. So that's going to be fine. Another detail that I added on this, which is actually on the real thing, is these very, very small inward extrusions, and then another really, really small one. If you want to make it actually realistic, you'd probably want to add these in. So I guess I can show you how I did that. I'm just going to use this as a reference because I kind of need a reference. So it's a little bit further back is where it starts. So if we tab into edit mode, do Control R, left click, and bring this down. It's probably about here where it starts. So I'm going to left click to add in an edge loop here. Then it gets extruded and brought in a little bit. So we're going to switch to vertex select. And we're going to do Control R, left click, and drag this all the way till it's touching these other vertices. And then left click. We're going to have to scale down this bolt a little bit so that it matches the size of this newly scaled down part. So what we're going to do is 1 for front view, Z for wireframe, B to box select, and select all the vertices to the left of these vertices. Then you can change your view if you want a little, and then do S, Shift and X to exclude the x-axis. Scale this down slightly, very, very slightly, because these little details, they don't get scaled down very much at all. You can get out a wireframe if you want and get a closer view, and do S, Shift and X, and kind of just make sure this is really small. Then we're going to do the same for the next one. We're actually going to do Control R, left click, and bring this into about here. Left click again. That's going to create this little band that goes right here. And then there's a very, very small extrusion and scale down again. So we're going to do Control R, left click, drag it all the way over. Left click, do 1 for front view, Z for wireframe, B for box select, select all of these. Get a better view of it. Then do S, Shift and X, and scale this down very slightly so that we have this. We still have to add the bevels in here to actually make it look like the way that it's supposed to be. And I may want to just scale this down slightly more just to make sure that it's visible here. So now we're going to switch to edge select. We can Alt right click, Alt and Shift right click on all of these. do Control B, mouse wheel up once, and do a very small bevel on these edges, and then left click, and now we should see that very small detail that's added into this bolt here. And if you want to adjust these, they're already selected right now, so what we could do is just move them up and down on the x-axis, and you can put these pretty much wherever you want. So if you think it should be closer to the bolt area or the spiral area, the screw area, whatever you want to call it, you can just bring them closer on the x-axis and it will be nice and close to that area. And you can also move them away if you would like to. So that is the basics of the bolt. There's one more thing that I kind of wanted to cover. Like, you can see the shading here is not the best. You can kind of see these lines right here. And on this other one, I pretty much corrected it for the most part. And the real reason we're getting those lines is actually because on this model, which is our current model, we have a lot of distance between these two edge loops and less distance between all the rest of the edge loops, and that's causing this awkward shading here. So if we just add in more edge loops, even though it's going to increase the vertex count, it's actually going to help it look a lot smoother and look a lot nicer. So all we really have to do to get rid of all this streaky line stuff is do Control R, mouse wheel up until you're happy. You can do 5 or 6, probably 5 is going to be good, then left click, right click. And you'll see that streakiness is actually gone for the most part, but it's now down here a little bit. So if we go back to edit mode and do Control R, then left click and right click, it's now reducing the area where the streakiness is. And you can just continue doing that, adding in edge loops until it's pretty much gone. And you'll see we have now a much nicer result. It's nice clean shading here. It looks a lot more natural. And you can compare it to this where you still see the lines. This one looks a lot nicer now. And you can do the same in this area if you want to. But before I do that, I think I actually want to Alt right click and do Control B on this edge, mouse wheel up once, and then left click, because I forgot to add a bevel on that outer edge, and I just wanted to make sure that I added in the bevel on that. So now to get rid of this streakiness, you can do the same thing, Control R, mouse wheel up maybe 7 times, left click, right click. That just creates similar spacing here to the spacing here to the spacing here. And again, you kind of get the streakiness at the top. So if you want, just add in a couple more edge loops at the top and that will go away. You could do the same at the bottom, but it actually doesn't look bad at the bottom, so you don't have to do it unless you feel it's appropriate. So I think this looks actually pretty good. So I'm just going to save it real quick. And then the last step is to just add this in to our car model. So to do that, we're going to do Shift D to duplicate, right click to cancel, press M to move it to a new layer, select the layer that has our rim, and then we're going to left click on that layer to go to that layer. You see our bolt is now here. So we can tab into edit mode, press A twice, 3 to go to side view, and we actually want to position this perfectly in the center of these other circles. You can see it's not in the right position on the Z-axis here. So we're going to have to use the 3D cursor again. So we're going to go into object mode by pressing tab, select the rim by right clicking it, press tab, and then we can alt right click on any of these edge loops, do Shift S, and cursor to selected. Because this is actually a mirrored circle, it's going to put the cursor a little bit away from the center. So what we can do is press N, or we can left click on this to bring up this panel here. And then we're going to bring this up until you see 3D cursor, and we're going to change the Y position. So we're going to left click and change this to 0 and then press enter. And that'll put it perfectly zeroed on the Y axis. So now we can press tab, right click to select our bolt, and press tab, then do Shift S, selection to cursor with an offset. And you'll see it's now very nicely all the way around lined up with the rest of the circle that is part of the rim. In order to position this properly, we're going to grab it on the x-axis, and we want to snap it to one of these bottom points here, so hold control, snap it there. Actually, I'm going to bring this back first on the x-axis, and then grab it on the x-axis, hold control, and snap it here. Because when I was looking at reference photos, the bottom of this circle here and the bottom of this bolt are actually pretty much lined up. So that's a good reference point as far as how far back the bolt should be in comparison to everything else. And I'm actually a lot happier with how far back the bolt is actually sticking out on this one. So I'm happy with that. If you would like to change how far back the bolt is sticking out, you can tab into edit mode, Z for wireframe, do 1 for front view, zoom in a little bit, select an edge or a vertex, B to box select, and get this entire bottom part here. And then you can just bring it back or forward on the x-axis depending on what you feel is appropriate. I'm just going to right click to cancel this because I'm actually happy with how far back it is. So that's it for that one bolt. We now need the other 4. So we're going to do 3 for side view. We're going to do Shift S, cursor to center. We're going to tab into edit mode, press A twice. We're going to change this to 3D cursor. We're going to do Shift D, R72, and press enter. And then do Shift R, and Shift R. And that's looking pretty good in my opinion. So that's going to be it for this part. Just go to File and Save. If you'd like to support my channel, you can do so on patreon.com/Stephen Brooks. Thank you for watching my videos, and thank you for your support. I'll see you in the next video.